In the summer of 1980, a young couple from Florida packed up their lives and headed west, chasing dreams of a fresh start in the vast expanse of Texas. After they moved to Texas, they stayed in contact with their families in Florida on a regular basis. But suddenly, Dean and Tina stopped calling. They stopped answering phone calls, and all traces of the couple and their young daughter went cold. I'm Elle, and this is the story of Dean, Tina, and baby Holly, a cold case of a missing family for over 40 years. Tina Gail Clouse was 17. She was a spirited teenager with a fierce love for her family. Her husband, Harold Dean Clouse, known to everyone as Dean, was 21. He was a hardworking man with a gentle demeanor and a knack for fixing things. They met in Florida, fell in love quickly, and married young. On January 24th, 1980, their world had brightened with the birth of their daughter, Holly Marie Clouse, a chubby-cheeked baby who brought joy to their modest little home in Volusia County. They had roots in New Smyrna Beach, but Dean and Tina, they yearned for something more. Better opportunities, perhaps, away from the familiar humidity. By August of 1980, they settled in Louisville, a suburb north of Dallas. Dean found work as a carpenter, and Tina stayed home taking care of little Holly. She was approaching her first birthday. Photos from that time frame show a happy trio. Dean holding Holly on his lap, with Tina smiling beside them. Neighbors said they were devoted parents who doted on their child without fanfare, but beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Money was tight, and the move hadn't brought the stability they had hoped for. In October of 1980, something shifted. The Clouses stopped calling home, letters ceased. Their Florida family grew worried, and phone calls went unanswered. It was as if they'd vanished into thin air. After losing contact with Dean and Tina, their families grew increasingly concerned. The family began actively searching for them, reaching out to the police department in Florida and in Texas. However, they faced significant roadblocks. Law enforcement dismissed their concerns, viewing the disappearance as a voluntary adult decision rather than foul play. When the couple initially moved to Texas, they stayed with Dean's cousin to save money for their own place. They soon rented their own apartment where they lived for a short time before disappearing. It had only been 2 to 3 weeks. Based on the timeline and accounts from family and investigators, Dean and Tina appear to have voluntarily cleared out of their rented apartment in Louisville. Letters sent to their address shortly after were returned undelivered with no forwarding information provided. The lack of official interest made it difficult to pursue formal investigations at the time. They were unable to file a standard police missing persons report because the police stated adults can choose to go no contact. Tina's family turned to the Salvation Army, which was the only agency willing to accept a missing persons report so soon after the disappearance. This report covered Dean, Tina, and baby Holly, reflecting the family's belief that something was seriously wrong. Around the same time, the families received a strange phone call from a woman in Los Angeles claiming to have the couple's 1978 red burgundy AMC Concord car. The family members arranged a meeting to retrieve the vehicle in Daytona Beach, Florida, where they met several people, including a woman who identified herself as Sister Susan. She informed them that Dean and Tina had joined a nomadic religious group, severed ties with their past lives, and were giving up all material possessions. The group was known as the Christ family. They were a religious group who wandered the American Southwest, led by a charismatic figure who called himself Jesus Christ himself. Members wore white robes, went barefoot, adhered to strict vegetarianism, and shunned material possessions. They preached separation from worldly ties, including families, believing it necessary for spiritual purity. Sometime that October, Dean and Tina joined the group, perhaps drawn by promises of community or escape from their financial struggles. Holly, not yet a year old, was along for the ride. This encounter provided the first clue, but it didn't lead to a reunion or solid information. They continued to hope and pray for answers, but the case essentially went cold from their perspective, with no new leads from authorities or other sources. Years turned to decades. A breakthrough finally came in October 2021, approximately 41 years after the initial disappearance. Unbeknownst to the families, Dean and Tina's bodies had been discovered in a wooded area in Harris County, Texas. They were discovered January 12, 1981, just months after the disappearance, but they remain unidentified for decades due to limited forensic technology at the time. Advances in forensic genetic genealogy allowed investigators, funded by a podcast production company, and working with organizations like the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, to identify their remains through DNA matches with distant relatives. The families were notified of this identification, providing the first solid information about the couple's fate. Around that time in late 1980, tension within the cult escalated. Reportedly, Dean clashed with the leader over the cult's doctrines, specifically the ones that advocated separating parents from children. Dean wanted out, and Tina stood by him, but leaving wasn't easy. The Christ family was insulated, controlling, and rumors swirled of coercive tactics. They had been murdered around late 1980 or early 1981. Dean and Tina met a violent end. Dean's skull was fractured by blunt force trauma, a brutal blow that suggested rage or struggle. Tina was strangled, her life squeezed out in a more intimate, deliberate act. Their bodies were left to decay in the underbrush hidden from the world. On January 12, 1981, a dog scavenging in the woods in Harris County alerted its owner to the gruesome find. 2 skeletons, one male and one female, lay partially exposed. The man had been beaten to death, the woman strangled. No identification, no clues, just remnants of clothing and the eerie silence of an unsolved mystery. Authorities dubbed them Harris County Does, and the case went cold almost immediately. Autopsies confirmed the victims were young, but without names, the leads dried up. In 2021, this revelation prompted the families to inform authorities about baby Holly, sparking a renewed search. At the scene, there was no sign of little Holly, no tiny bones, no discarded belongings. Investigators at the time had no idea the couple had a child. The mystery deepened, but with unidentified victims, the question wasn't even asked. When the family mentioned the missing baby Holly, the case exploded with new urgency. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children created an age-progressed image of what Holly might look like as a 40-something woman. Investigators from the Texas Attorney General's cold case and missing persons unit, along with local police, dove in. They traced leads about the Christ family, interviewing former members who recalled Dean and Tina. The group had a history of separating families, and the woman who dropped off the baby matched descriptions of one of the members. Hundreds of miles away in Arizona, a strange event unfolded. Sometime shortly after the murders, possibly as early as November of 1980, although accounts vary, two women dressed in white robes arrived at a church in Yuma. They were barefoot, spoke of their nomadic faith, and handed over a healthy infant girl. They claimed the baby's parents had given her up to join the religious mission. Twist after twist unfolded. One lead pointed to a woman in Oklahoma who had submitted DNA to a genealogy site, and matches were aligned. Her distant relatives connected her to Dean and Tina. On June 7, 2022, coincidentally Dean's birthday, investigators knocked on Holly Miller's door in Oklahoma. She was 42 at the time, a restaurant manager with a busy family life. She was hit with the facts. Her biological parents had been murdered, she'd been missing for 40 years, and her extended family had been searching for her. Holly was in shock. The church took the child in, and she was placed with a loving adoptive family, a pastor and his wife who raised her in a stable, faith-filled home. They named her Holly. Coincidentally, it was the same name she was given at birth. She grew up in Arizona and later moved to Oklahoma. She married and became Holly Miller. The couple had 5 children. She built a life as a devoted mother and grandmother. Days later, she connected with her aunts, uncles, and cousins via video call. They shared photos and stories, and in November of 2022, Holly traveled to Florida for an emotional reunion, visiting her parents' graves and hugging relatives she had never known. She expressed gratitude for her adoptive parents who had given her a wonderful life, while struggling with the horror of her unknown background. In 2023, Holly wrote her story, Finding Baby Holly, Lost to a Cult, Surviving My Parents' Murders, and Saved by Prayer. It detailed her journey from oblivion to revelation. Today, she advocates for genetic genealogy, helping other families find closure. Her story is one of profound loss, twisted into unexpected redemption. A baby lost in tragedy, emerging decades later as a beacon of hope. The story's darkest intrigue remains unsolved. Who killed Dean and Tina? Suspicion falls heavily on the Christ family. Former members have come forward alleging the leader's volatile temper and the cult's oppressive ways. The 2 women who dropped off Holly were described in detail, barefoot, robed, driving a vehicle that was linked to the cult. Investigators believe they hold the key information, but the cult dissolved in the 1990s. Its leader was long dead. As of 2026, no arrests have been made, though the case remains active. The Christ family was a religious group often described as a cult. It was founded in the early 1960s by Charles Franklin McHugh, a former painting contractor from California who, after a 40-day retreat in the Arizona desert, claimed a divine revelation that he was the reincarnation of Jesus Christ. He changed his name to Jesus Christ Lightning Amen and established the group in Hemet, California, where it grew to around 2,000 members at its peak. All members legally changed their surname to Christ. The group faced legal troubles in the mid-1980s. The leader was convicted of possessing and selling methamphetamines, and several members were arrested for cultivating large amounts of marijuana on their compound. The cult dissolved after their legal issues in the 1980s and 1990s. In 2003, the leader was also convicted of annoying or molesting a child under the age of 18. That might explain why he always separated children from their parents. He died in 2010 at the age of 73. Thanks for watching. Have a great week.